What's up, guys? It's your girl, Little Miss. A long time ago, I did a retrospective on the God of War series. For the most part, I think I did pretty good. They do hold up pretty well compared to my more recent content. Well, all except for those first two videos. I was still figuring this whole YouTube shit out at the time, so I was still pretty bad at this stuff. So yeah, those old videos really suck. I replayed God of War 1 recently, and I loved it a lot more than I originally did. There's just so much to appreciate in this game. So much that I didn't talk about in the original review. So now I think it's time for a redo. It's time to revisit one of my favorite video games ever made, the 2005 PS2 classic, God of War. I think the Sonic Unleashed nighttime stages just made me appreciate the old God of War games a lot more because they completely fumbled the bag there, Jesus Christ. So God of War was made by Sony Santa Monica under game director David Jaffe, and just like I said in the old reviews, I hate this guy. He's such a pretentious idiot, but as much as I hate him, I will give credit where it's due. He had a really good vision for this project. Inspired by old movies like Clash of the Titans and Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaffe wanted to make a game that put the player through a grand adventure within a fantastical setting, and what better setting than Greek mythology? And again, like I said in the original review, this is what urged me to get into the series in the first place. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Greek mythology. Back in elementary school, I used to reluctantly read Percy Jackson, but I willingly read an old graphic novel series by George O'Connor about it, which I remember being pretty good. And as for God of War's mythical world building, there's no better way to talk about it than diving right in. And I mean that literally because the game starts off by Kratos killing himself.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an end. Death would be his escape from madness.
Now, you're probably wondering how he ended up in this situation. Our story actually starts 3 weeks prior to Kratos' precarious plummet to the pointy pitfall, where we see our protagonist on a boat in the middle of the Aegean Sea. The whole fleet is being terrorized by a Hydra, and we open with a grand set piece as we climb from ship to ship, fight as many undead legionnaires as we can, and occasionally fight the Hydra. While the other games have stronger openings than this one, I still think it does a great job at hooking us. The game teaches you how to play with these little pop-up messages, and it's easy to just get into the flow of things. So with that said, let's talk about the combat real quick, which, by the way, is the best part about this game. The combat was slightly inspired by Devil May Cry, and while I have no experience with that series, save for playing like an hour of the first game and deciding it wasn't for me, I mentioned many times before that the combat in God of War 1 is really fun, fast, and fluid. Of course, Kratos wields the Blades of Chaos, one of the most iconic weapons in video game history. They're super fun to control, they feel really snappy, and the damage done to your enemies feels really impactful. Of course, pressing square dishes out fast, basic attacks, and the triangle button deals heavier yet slower ones, and circle is the interact button where you can grab and throw certain enemies or perform quick time event finishing moves. This was back during the 6th or 7th generation of gaming, so of course quick time events are everywhere. I've talked about some of these QTE heavy games before with the RE4 and Sonic Unleashed videos, and I'll say it again, I have no problem with these, they're pretty fun. The only nitpick I have with them is the button mashing ones, since they ask quite a lot of you to pull them off, but it doesn't take away from the overall fun factor. Of course, Kratos has other moves up his sleeve in the form of evading with the right stick and blocking enemy attacks with L1, and performing a perfect block feels super satisfying, especially when you upgrade your blades to unlock the parry. You can upgrade the blades with red orbs earned by killing enemies, getting high combos, or destroying random pots in the overworld, and if you have enough of them, you can mosey over to the upgrade screen to unlock more moves. moves. My favorite one is the Cyclone of Chaos, which allows Kratos to do this little Crash Bandicoot spin move. It's really useful for crowd control, but not as useful as square, square, triangle. This combo disorients almost any enemy in your path. Yeah, it's really the only real flaw to the combat, but I just refrain from using it 80% of the time for fairness sake. That's not to mention that this game has some great enemy variety that test out your skills in great ways. You have the Undead Legionnaires, Minotaurs, Gorgons, Cyclopes, Harpies, Satyrs, and Cerberi, which are the only enemies I don't really like fighting, but the rest are pretty fun to tackle. And throughout the game, the gods of Olympus themselves grant you magical power-ups to spice up the combat. Those being Poseidon's Rage, which electrocutes any enemy within its range, which I use quite a lot, especially after fully upgrading it. There's also the Head of Medusa, which turns enemies into stone, and it's arguably more useful than Poseidon's Rage. I love flashbanging enemies before hacking them to pieces. Zeus's Fury is a ranged attack that lets you shoot lightning bolts at enemies, which is kind of situational and is just okay overall. And finally, the Army of Hades, which summons souls of the damned to give you a helping hand. You can only use this twice on a full magic meter, but it's by far the most helpful. And all of these are tied to their own magic meter, replenished by picking up blue orbs, and your health is replenished with green ones. The only times magic is unlimited is when you activate Kratos' Rage ability, which builds up slowly during combat, which is activated with L3 and R3, and it makes him faster and invulnerable to enemy attacks. You can also upgrade the magic abilities with red orbs, and you're allowed to pick and choose which ones you want to buff, which is nice. It lets you choose however you want to play, allowing you to upgrade your favorite abilities and neglect your most hated ones. Blade of Artemis, anyone? Your health and magic meters can also be upgraded by finding Gorgon Eyes and Phoenix Feathers respectively, and they're found in fairly hidden spots, which encourages exploration, and I really like that. I don't mean to brag, but I maxed out the health meter about 3 hours in. How do I look now, boys? And the movement isn't that bad. Kratos runs at a great pace, constantly jogging to his objective, and he can also double jump, climb on walls, grab onto ledges, and shimmy across them. The only problems I have with the movement is the tightrope sections. They're kinda mid. They're pretty easy, but I'd rather just traverse the overworld in literally any other way. And the other problem is more so a puzzle issue rather than a movement one, but it sucks how slow you move when you're pushing something. I get you can charge up a kick to move it along quicker, but even that takes a while to charge up. It's a good thing they went on to speed up the pushing in the sequels. But back to the AG&C, we get our first boss fight here, the Hydra. Unfortunately, this game only has 3 bosses as opposed to the sequels, which are practically known for their insane roster of boss fights, but what's here in God of War 1 is pretty interesting. Granted, the Hydra is the weakest one here, personally. All you gotta do is beat up the smaller heads, impale them, and climb up to impale the main head. I think the real showstopper of this boss is the atmosphere and music, which I'll elaborate more on once there's some downtime. For now, it's time to learn a little more on our lead. Everything about Kratos' character is pretty much common knowledge to everyone except me when I first played this game back in like 2023, so I can confirm that this game's approach to telling us about his whole ordeal is pretty effective. This game has a pretty simple story, and part of it is drip feeding the player some tidbits about Kratos' backstory. All the NPCs who cower in fear of the Hydra and the undead ghouls fear Kratos just the same. Some of them would rather die than be rescued by him. There's the iconic joke where the boat captain is swallowed by the beast and he's relieved when Kratos shows up to help him out, but it turns out that he was only looking for the key around his neck and he lets the captain die anyway.
I didn't come back for you.
It's a pretty clear way to communicate that Kratos is more so an anti-hero in this story. Kratos was gonna use the key to rescue civilians who were trapped in the captain's quarters, but the undead legionnaires beat him to it.
Slaughtered like animals, the victims lay before him, a reminder of his own past, a past he could never escape. His only solace was the sea, endlessly sailing from one harbor to the next in service to the gods of Olympus. All his hopes rested with them.
Like the narrator said, Kratos has been in servitude to the Olympians, with the battle against the Hydra being one of the many things the gods bestowed upon him in exchange for them to get rid of his memories of the past. Kratos' only human interaction is with prostitutes, and yeah, this is during the edgy era of gaming, so of course there's violence and boobs. You can even do a quick time event minigame where Kratos does the tube snake boogie with these two women. These sex minigames went on to become a running joke in the series, but here it kinda services the story, just to show how distant this man has become in the last 10 years of his life, as shown on his journal near the entrance of the bedroom. I'm sorry, what? But a glimmer of hope still shines for Kratos because Athena has one last task for him, traveling to Athens to kill Ares, the god of war. Hey, that's the name of the game!
And if I am able to do this, to kill a god, then the visions, they will end?
Complete this final task, and the past that consumes you will be forgiven. Have faith, Kratos. The gods do not forget those who come to their aid.
Leaving the rotting carcass of the Hydra behind, Kratos set sail once more. His greatest challenge and freedom from his growing madness lay before him in the ancient city of Athens.
So here we are at the Athens docks, a fair contrast to the previous area. As opposed to the bombastic, rainy set piece, this area starts off a little more somber as we do some light platforming. The music here is also on point, really going with the evening jog in the Athens harbor feel. And on that note, now's a better time than ever to shed some more light on this game's presentation. Since I just mentioned the music, I'll just say now that each area has incredible music that fits the vibe, from the peaceful calm before the storm of the Athens harbor, the mysterious otherworldly temple of Pandora, or the harsh depths of Hades. They really nailed what they were setting out to do with the whole cinematic adventure angle. Each location is different from the last, and they all do the Greek mythology setting justice. Everything in this game is appropriately fantastical, barbaric, and mysterious. Each area has a surprising amount of detail for 2005, even if some locations can come off as looking a little plastic-y. It almost makes it look like a movie set. Not really a bad thing, just something I thought was kind of funny. The game looks its best when the camera zooms out to show grand establishing shots. The camera's always swaying along with you, and I had zero problems with it. In addition to servicing the locations and framing them perfectly, it's also never a hindrance during combat, which may seem like a minor thing, but once you've played Sonic Unleashed nighttime stages, you'll know how bad this gameplay can be when done wrong. Of course, the cutscene presentation can be a little bit dated. There's the pre-rendered in-game cutscenes, and there's the CGI ones. I know this game is 20 years old and I upscaled it via emulation, but the pre-rendered cutscenes remain pixelated, which is expected. I think I prefer the look of the CGI cutscenes, which have their own unique charm to it. This game also has some incredible sound design. Everything from the distinct enemy growls, the mythical upgrade swirl, and the menus that sound like blades clashing into each other. And that's not to mention this game's voice acting. It's pretty good. This game's got quite an impressive roster. People like Steve Bloom, Fred Tatasciore, Claudia Black, and Nolan North. As an Uncharted fan, I'm getting all giddy. And of course, Terrence C. Carson as Kratos. One of the most iconic video game performances out there. He's what really brings the ghost of Sparta to life. Apparently, he recorded this game during a pretty rough time in his life, so all this anger in his performance is 100% genuine, and you can definitely tell. But back to Athens, there's some cool standout moments like this one where you gotta shoot the door down with this doohickey, push a massive statue down to open a new path, swinging around on ropes which actually controls pretty well, climb across them which is just kinda meh, and upon entering the city we see this insane shot of Ares, the god of war, tearing the Athens army apart. Ares' ruthless conquest is the reason why Athena tasked Kratos to kill Ares, but how exactly are we supposed to kill a god? Well, we're on our way to the Athens Oracle to find out. On our way there, we walk through the war-torn streets of the city where we fight some more monsters and we have the option to enter houses that house some treasure chests for extra collectibles. You can also kill innocent people in the streets, and I normally choose to ignore them, except when I was in the middle of this Cyclops fight and they kind of just got in the way. at least they give me green orbs, I mean. And speaking of innocent civilians' death, there's also this moment where this woman runs away out of fear for Kratos, saying she'd rather take her chances with the monsters outside than be trapped indoors with him. She clumsily falls and cracks on the floor like Humpty Dumpty, and we can take her key to advance forward. Boy, I sure do love padding! There's also this part where Kratos meets this guy on the bridge, and he goes,
You! I must get across! Release the lever! Extend the bridge!
No! I won't let them get me. They won't get across. These monsters, they'll tear me apart.
Coward.
So we do a puzzle or two to obtain Zeus's fury, and side note, you can really tell this is the first game in the series because the designs for the gods, well, minus Athena, are pretty weird looking. From God of War 2 onwards, the designs are slightly more imposing to fit their antagonistic roles, but this story isn't really about that. So here they're portrayed as divine do-gooders aiding Kratos on his quest to kill the evil God of War. Oh, what a simpler time indeed.
You have done well, Kratos. Go with the gods. Go forth in the name of Olympus.
Anyway, now we're at the Temple of the Oracle, and in order to find out our next objective, we need to rescue the Oracle herself from these harpies. On our way there, we meet a strange gravedigger who definitely won't be important later, and there's this cool part where you gotta cover up holes in the walls in order for the harpies to stop infinitely spawning. And once we get to the Oracle, we have to do a decent platforming challenge in order to save her from falling to her death. I remember in my original review, I called this part annoying, and looking back, I don't know what I was on. This section is fine.
Help me, Kratos, please!
Once we rescue her, she takes a glimpse into Kratos' barbaric past, showing he was once a Spartan general, drunk with power and eager to conquer everything for the glory of Sparta. The only ones who resented this behavior was his wife and daughter, but before we can find out more, the Oracle decides she's seen enough, and she ultimately tells us what to do to kill the God of War. In order to accomplish this, Kratos must travel east of Athens to the Desert of the Lost Souls and find the one and only Pandora's Box. The Oracle warns us that while many have searched for the box, none of them came back. After passing a suspiciously sword-shaped bridge, we go through a combat gauntlet in the form of the Athens sewers, and once we escape, a new dawn has arrived and Ares' forces rage on. And past the gates to the east, we come across the second worst part in the entire game. When you ask someone what the worst part of God of War 2005 is, they're likely gonna tell you the underworld is the worst. And yeah, that part sucks harder than me, but I just really fucking hate the Desert of the Lost Souls. Here you're supposed to walk around aimlessly and look for 3 sirens, and once you kill them all, the path forward opens up. Like, do I even need to say anything? Look at this shit. I can barely see anything. Why am I walking around in a sandstorm, and how come there isn't even any music playing? Thankfully, it's a semi-confined area, so it won't take long to encounter them all, and once we're past that bullshit, Kratos goes full Moses and parts the sandstorm, and we're finally at the Temple of Pandora. The temple is located on top of the fallen king of the Titans, Kronos, who's been sentenced by the gods to endlessly wander the desert with the temple chained onto his back. Once Kratos leaps onto the fallen Titan, he climbs for 3 days straight, and we get this absolutely gorgeous shot of him walking towards the temple, and just listen to that music. The first thing Kratos encounters is this zombie gravekeeper man who's pretty funny but also slightly intriguing. Once the cutscene plays, we see he's kind of just an asshole.
The gods hid Pandora's box in here so no mortal would ever claim its power. And yet, year after year, I open the gate for more and more soldiers and place more and more bodies on these pyres. If I were you, I'd leave now.
But talking to him again reveals he was the first one to go after Pandora's box, and as punishment, the gods sentenced him to burn the bodies of failed warriors who went in after him. This dude is just one of the many mysteries we encounter within the temple, and as we step inside, the vibe is absolutely perfect. The music playing in the background, The Architect's Mysteries, has that mysterious, otherworldly vibe that goes perfectly with the temple exploration. I often use it as background music for other videos. It's that good. And as for the temple itself, this is where the majority of the game takes place in, an elaborate dungeon filled with dangerous obstacles, intricate puzzles, and a long lost story of its own, which we'll get into later. Even if the temple is very linear, much like the game as a whole, each challenge ends up looping back around to the center, the Rings of Pandora, making the architecture all the more fascinating. The level designers can't be praised enough for this game, I swear to God. From here on out, the game's immediate plot takes a bit of a backseat, and in its place, the main focus is the temple's challenges. Our first challenge is the challenge of Atlas. First, we gotta grab these shields to open a door, and we come across a statue of the Titan Atlas who holds up the Earth. In order for the statue to lift up the planet, we need to find a crank handle in the other room. A few gauntlets later, we take the crank and put it in its place, gaining access to the next room. Take this dude's rotting head and use it as a key to unlock the next challenge. Sounds pretty easy, but I only got it done quickly because I knew what to do. It was pretty hard figuring out what to do at first. It's a little easy to get lost here. I even clumsily fell to my death at one point. Thank God the checkpoints in this game are really forgiving. Up next is the challenge of Poseidon. After fighting a bunch of Cerberus, the horror, we get another really cool shot of Kronos as we climb by the side of the temple. There's also a muse key hidden on the side over here, which, wow, look at that. Sorry everyone, but we interrupt this retrospective to bring you the bonus content! Since this game came out in 2005, there's plenty of secrets and bonus unlockables, which really makes you miss this era of gaming. Nowadays, half of this stuff would be paid DLC and half of it would just be on YouTube somewhere, but here, there's cool stuff you can access by unlocking some of the harder difficulties and generally just playing the game. Who would have thought? For one, I already mentioned the muse keys. There's 4 of them hidden throughout the game, which you can use to gain access to a secret room that gives you more space in your meters. I got both keys, but unfortunately I forgot to look for the room in this playthrough. Oh well, I don't mind replaying this game for the billionth time. There's also some documentaries going over the game's inception and behind the scenes, as well as scrapped concepts for enemies, levels, and designs for Kratos. You can also watch trailers of the game, which is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it's got the PS2 logo on it and everything. My favorite unlockable comes in the form of the alternate costumes, which are unlocked after beating the challenge of the gods. You got the default look, and you have the the chef of war, Bubbles, Dairy Bastard. Okay, there's nothing funny about this one. He's just wearing Ares' armor. And my personal favorite, Tycoonius.
Foul beast! I will send you back to the depths of Hades!
Of course, second place would have to go to the secret messages unlocked after beating the game on the hardest difficulty, God Mode. Once you do so, you get a phone number that gives you a pre-recorded message of Kratos talking to you.
At last you are here. I have killed the Hydra myself, ripped the head off Medusa's shoulders, even killed a god of Olympus, but I have never seen such skill and strength as you.
God, this is making me so hard right now. And if you destroy the statues on Mount Olympus at the end of the game, you get another message where Kratos kills David Jaffe.
By the gods, you've done it. Somehow you found your way here to me. I offer you my congratulations and my respect. Together, we shall conquer the perils that lay before us, and we shall always...
Kratos, dude, they did it. They found our Easter egg.
Who are you?
It's me, David Jaffe. I directed the game.
What game?
Your game, God of War?
Go away or...
Dude, don't you get it? These guys, they spent all that time breaking those statues. I mean, they must have taken, like, forever. And then they figured out the whole secret code thing.
I do not know what you are talking about.
We hid this secret pretty damn deep, huh, Kratos?
If I kill you, I will get help orbs.
But wait. If you got the secret from the net or a magazine, then actually you kind of suck. I mean, work for it a bit, right, Kratos? Actually, can I call you Krait?
No. Go away or I'll...
Don't you hate it when they get the codes off the net? It's so lazy. Hey, say, Krait, what are you so pale for?
I am serious.
You know, up close, you actually look kind of pasty, if you don't mind me saying. It's kind of gross.
All right, that's it!
Of course, there's also the character graveyard, which is more unused models, including this Spyro the Dragon looking ass design for Beta Kratos. And finally, we get non-canon videos that act as little epilogues or fun facts. The first one, Fate of the Titan, is just ridiculous. Kronos eventually dies and he's discovered in the modern day, which is just the funniest thing in the world to me. These other two aren't strictly canon, but they did go on to recycle these plot points for future games, which is pretty cool. Birth of the Beast tells the story of Kratos unwillingly separating from his brother, who would grow up in the depths of Tartarus to seek revenge on Kratos for abandoning him. And A Secret Revealed sees Kratos journey back to Sparta to find out who his father is, only to sacrifice his mom after she transforms into a monster after revealing Kratos' father is none other than Zeus himself. Even if, again, these aren't exactly canon, it's interesting to see that even when they weren't sure they were gonna get a sequel, they knew exactly what they wanted for Kratos' future.
He was the son of a god. He was the son of Zeus, the father of Olympus. And with that knowledge came the certainty that one day soon he would take his revenge against the father, against the god who had abandoned him all those years ago.
And hey, if you don't exactly feel like busting your balls to unlock them the hard way, just go to the pause menu or upgrade menu and plug a second controller to input a secret code L3, R2, L2, R2, R1, L2, R1, L1, R2, triangle, R2, triangle. But we don't talk about that. Back to the game, we go into the Chamber of Sacrifice, one of the more iconic moments in this game. At the end of the chamber, we see some kind of incinerator and environmental storytelling in the form of a corpse next to a note. It reveals this guy offed himself, adding that nothing is worth such a terrible act, not even Pandora's box. After fixing a crank, we find this imprisoned soldier, and well, you know. But you know what's cooler than burning alive? Going for a swim! The next room gives us the Trident of Poseidon, allowing us to swim underwater. I know underwater levels in video games kinda get a bad rep for having bad controls, but I actually kinda like how Kratos swimming feels. You can ascend and descend with square and X respectively, and holding R1 lets you charge up a dash to swim faster and destroy certain walls. There's a couple booby traps that make use of the dash pretty well, like this really scary passage where these spiked walls constantly close in on you. Kratos, come on, please hurry, get the fuck out of it! And the last thing of note here are the Naiads, the daughters of Poseidon. If you press the circle button on them, you get to smooch them. God, I wish that were me. The next passage leads us to the The next passage leads us to the challenge of Hades, and as such, the underwater ruins are replaced by this massive hellish chamber of fire and brimstone. This challenge is the most challenging challenge that's ever been challenged, and you'll see why soon. Our first task is to perform a blood sacrifice of 8 centaurs within these circles, and afterwards we enter this pretty tough maze where we gotta do more sacrifices to open this door. And once we raise the Hades statue in the main room and illuminate the way forward, we need to navigate this room full of flaming boulders. Where's Chris Redfield when you need him? The objective here is to quickly find a way out by opening each door on the walls, and you're always at risk of getting run over by these things. But honestly, it wasn't so bad. I mean, it's a lot better than the next section. Tightrope walking. Yay! As if it wasn't already bad enough, the devs decided to throw in these saw blades for good measure, so you constantly have to jump around them. But I mean, it's alright. After all, it's not the worst one in this game. And they quickly make up for this by giving us our second boss fight, Pandora's Guardian, a massive undead minotaur in a suit of armor. This design is sick as fuck, and I actually think the boss itself is pretty cool, albeit a little unfair sometimes. The gimmick here is that you gotta destroy this big boy's armor in order to do actual damage to him, so get ready to wail away at him until the quick time event shows up. The QTE is basically an extended version of the Gorgon ones where you have to rotate the control stick, aka my least favorite one, but hey, it's just a small annoyance in an otherwise cool boss. After the quick time event, you gotta shoot him in the face, rinse and repeat until he's naked, and then you're free to kill him. And with that, we finished the first 3 challenges, and after we perfectly align the Rings of Pandora and activate the temple, we're free to traverse the next area, the Cliffs of Madness.
Your progress is impressive, Kratos. But be warned. Once you ascend to the upper levels of the temple, you will not be able to return without Pandora's box.
From here on out, the game starts to be a little bitch with its puzzles and combat gauntlets. Our first task is to find a couple of necklaces to place on these statues to extend the platforms ahead. Sounds pretty simple, right? Well, I mean, it is. But that doesn't mean it's particularly fun. First off, we have this puzzle where we need to place these blocks in the correct spaces. This will be a pretty stimulating puzzle for my ooga booga gamer brain, but unfortunately it's bogged down by just how goddamn slow the pushing is. It took me about 45 years to get through this section, and the second puzzle here is absolutely anxiety-inducing. Pull the lever, push the block, hurry the fuck up, and pray you get the block to the other end of the room so you can make it onto here before the spikes activate. I did this on the first try. I don't know how. Please don't ask me. But afterwards we make it to the Architect's Tomb, and after a couple more puzzles and enemy gauntlets that absolutely took the piss out of me, we see a dead guy in the center. Yeah, grab another skull and move on. Except not really, because we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Or, in this case, the architect in the room. This man was Pathos Verdes III, the architect who was commissioned by Zeus to build the temple. His story is drip-fed to us throughout the temple, and it parallels Kratos's, which is really cool. He starts off as a loyal servant of the gods, but as the story advances, things start to fall apart for him. After the challenge of Atlas, the grave found is the one of his deceased son, who died under the servitude of his father and the gods. After his second son died, Pathos Verdes was driven insane with grief, with his mental state being reflected in the Cliffs of Madness. As his story progresses and he loses more of his family, the temple's puzzles become more and more elaborate and dangerous, and by this point he's completely renounced his loyalty to the gods. The block puzzle in the Cliffs of Madness is meant to represent Pathos Verdes' shattered soul, and in the Architect's Tomb we finally get to see him in the flesh, or what little flesh is left anyway. In a fit of rage, the Architect seems to have killed his wife, and in order to escape the grief of what he'd done, he killed himself afterward. The story of Pathos Verdes III is one of the most grim stories in the series, and it serves as a warning to Kratos. A warning of how the gods treat their most loyal servants, and how it drove this man insane, but as we see later, it's a warning that completely flies over Kratos' head. Funnily enough, back in the day there were talks of a movie adaptation for this game, and allegedly it would have had Kratos team up with the Oracle to traverse the temple, and Pathos Verdes III would have been alive in this version, actively shifting the temple with magic. It would have been pretty cool to see this version of the story, and it kind of just proves that the Amazon show could have started off with the Greek saga with 0 issues if they went for that, but that's something not worth getting mad about. But wait a minute, if Pathos Verdes III's story is meant to parallel Kratos and our old friend Pathy gave his wife a big chest piercing, what does this mean for Kratos? Yeah, I'm sure you all know where this is going. As mentioned earlier, the game drip feeds us Kratos' dark past, and most of it is done through this temple. After the challenge of Atlas, Kratos comes across a hallway filled with with corpses of fallen warriors, bringing him back to the time he was drunk with power, showing his connection with Ares. Everyone knows what happens at this point, but yeah, Kratos goes,
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours.
And from then on, Kratos sold his soul to the god of war, continuing a path he would go on to regret for the rest of his life. Ares was the one to give Kratos his iconic Blades of Chaos, wanting to mold him into the perfect warrior. These blades were crafted in the depths of the underworld, and they were seared into his forearm, serving as one of the many reminders of the biggest mistake of Kratos' life. In his servitude to Ares, he was tasked to dispose of anyone who opposed him, murdering countless innocent lives and overall just being a jackass.
They've built this temple to offer prayers to Athena! This entire village stands as an affront to Lord Ares! Burn this village! Burn it to the ground!
And of course, as we all know, Kratos mows down everyone in the temple, fully unaware that his wife and child were one of the casualties. As punishment for this, the ashes of his family were fused onto his skin, and thus the ghost of Sparta was born. And this is where it all comes together. This is why everyone was so afraid of Kratos. This is why he's so depressed and angry all the time, and why he has an undying vendetta against the god of war. In his quest to turn Kratos into the perfect warrior, Ares orchestrated the whole thing. In his eyes, they were only holding Kratos back, but now everything will be fixed. The nightmares that haunt him will end, and Kratos will avenge his loved ones. Because after all this time, we finally get a hold of Pandora's box.
Kratos, your quest is at an end. You are the first mortal to ever reach Pandora's box. There is still time to save Athens. You must bring the box back to my city and use it to kill Ares. Return to Athens, Kratos. Return and save my city.
But first... Jesus, I hope you like 50 billion harpies and conveyor belts of doom. Who the fuck designed this area? David Jeffy, you're a hack! Harpies? More like herpes. I got him! As Kratos is pushing the box back to the entrance, Ares takes notice of this, throwing this massive log from Athens all the way into the temple. Jokes aside, Kratos actually does die here, but not even death can stop this man. After a surprise funny cameo from the boat captain again.
Let go, fool! You won't drag me down to that cursed river!
There is a task left for me above. I will see it completed.
You again?
We're about to embark on the worst part in the game. Man, you know you're in for a bad time when it looks bad. I get what they were going for, you know, with the whole platforms made of flesh and bones with the blood river below, but that's literally all there is. It just looks pretty empty, even when they add the generic cliffs later on. The underworld scene in God of War 3 looks much better and is fleshed out a lot more. I know that was on more powerful hardware, but literally every other location in God of War 1 just looked better than this. But anyway, how is this section gameplay-wise? I mean, we're literally in hell, so... I already mentioned I don't like the tightrope bits, yeah? Well, this level is all about them. Wowie! And not only that, we aren't doing them across wooden beams anymore. No. David Walking Joke Jaffe decided it would be in my best interest to have these shitty balancing sections on rotating slabs of meat with big-ass blades sticking out. You really need to take your time with these, otherwise you'll meet the same fate I did. Now, occasionally you do more combat, and I'm just relieved to do something fun for once. Another thing worth noting is that this area is really generous with its red orbs. Each chest gives you like 1,000 or something. I guess they really wanted you to max out everything just in time for the final boss, huh? But before we get to that, hey look! Pain! I think everyone unanimously agrees that this barrel of doom is the worst part of the game. Here you gotta climb up the barrel and avoid the spikes. Sounds pretty simple, but in execution it fucking sucks. The hitboxes here are really weird. If Kratos Kratos so much grazes the tip of his white ash-colored Spartan cock against them, you fall all the way down to the ground and you're forced to try again. This right here is the crown jewel of the underworld, truly the cherry on top of the worst area of the game. With that said, I fucked up a total of once and the rest of it was fairly easy. I don't know, man, this is like my 5th time playing the game and I think the worst parts of the game just get easier and easier with each playthrough. But with that, we're done with the underworld. Yippee! Now we gotta climb up this rope and it brings us back to the Temple of the Oracle. The weird gravedigger is still here and he was the one to get Kratos out of the underworld thanks to the grave. The gravedigger is heavily implied to be Zeus in disguise, with him stating that Athena isn't the only god on Kratos' side. Man, I already said this before, but this was a much simpler time for the franchise's story. It's honestly pretty funny. But regardless, we're back in the Temple of the Oracle, and Kratos was too late to stop Ares' forces. The entire city is in ruin. What was once a bright, clean temple that was mostly unharmed from the ongoing invasion is now completely destroyed. Even the Oracle isn't doing so well. She's outside, slowly bleeding out.
Kratos, return, but too late. Ares has taken Athens. There is no more hope. No hope.
Now it's finally time for the final boss against Ares. Before Kratos can shoot Pandora's box out of his hands, Ares starts to boast at Zeus. For what little screen time Ares had, I think he's actually a pretty cool character. And this scene revealing that all along his motivations were just to impress his father just perpetuates one of the franchise's most important themes before the whole soap opera angle really took off for the sequel.
Kratos, returned even from the underworld. Is this the best you can do, father? You send a broken mortal to defeat me, the god of war?
And once Kratos shoots down Pandora's box, he opens it up, revealing the power to kill a god. A mega mushroom from Super Mario.
You are still just a mortal. Every bit as weak as the day you begged me to save your life.
I am not the same man you found that day. The monster you've created has returned to kill you.
You have no idea what a true monster is, Kratos. Your final lesson is at hand.
So this is the final boss of God of War, Ares, the God of War. Phase 1 starts off pretty simple. He has a couple attacks utilizing his new spider legs, and all in all it was a pretty easy boss to fight, made even easier once you max out Army of Hades and take out half of his health with the press of the left trigger twice. However, the second phase is a little more interesting. Ares sends Kratos to this dreamlike otherworld of the past. In front of Kratos lies the temple where he slaughtered all those innocent people, including his wife and daughter. And lo and behold, they're still there, but not for long, as dozens of evil Kratos clones teleport in to take them away once again. So in this section, you must protect your family, prevent yourself from repeating the same sin, and comfort your wife and child by giving them your own health. Not only is it a pretty fun enemy gauntlet, but it's a great blend of gameplay and storytelling, and I really like that. But as we know, this is still Ares' domain, and in a cruel attempt to once again break Kratos' spirit,
Not again.
You should have joined me, Kratos. You should have been stronger.
By the gods.
The battle was not over. The gods, it seemed, had a final gift for Kratos.
I still have allies in Olympus, Ares. Now, you will see how strong I am.
The third phase was also a breeze, but it's kind of weird to me. This new sword kind of controls like the Blade of Artemis, that is slower than the Blades of Chaos, but dealing more powerful attacks, aka it sucks big sweaty penis, and the health bar for Ares is shared with Kratos. So you're basically playing tug-o-war with the God of War. See what I did there? As long as you avoid his pillar attacks and stop spamming circle once the quick time event specifically wants you to, you can avenge your family no sweat.
Kratos had done the impossible. A mortal defeating a god. Ares was no more. the city had been saved.
It's Sonic Adventure all over again. And just like the narrator said, Kratos has done the impossible. He was the only mortal to retrieve Pandora's box and kill a god. He finally completed the task bestowed upon him by the gods. But just as the doomed architect's story warned us, the gods don't deliver their end of the bargain.
We promised your sins would be forgiven, and so they are. But we never promised to take away your nightmares. No man, no god could ever forget the terrible deeds you have done.
In order to free himself from his torment, Kratos makes it to the highest mountains above the Aegean Sea in order to take his own life, as we saw at the beginning of the game. But before he can do this, Athena lets us know,
You will not die this day, Kratos. The gods cannot allow one who has performed such service to perish by his own hand. Ares' tactics were brutal. His path of destruction had to be stopped. But now there is an empty throne in Olympus, and a new god of war is needed. Take these stairs, Kratos. They lead to your ultimate reward.
This ending is pretty sweet in my opinion. Our ultimate reward is setting foot on Mount Olympus itself, a golden palace above the heavens. The music here is also one of my favorites in the series. It really makes you feel accomplished for conquering the game's toughest battles. Once we make it inside, we're in Ares' old throne room with statues of your fallen foes welcoming you next to the empty throne in the center. Kratos' ultimate reward was becoming the new god of war.
And from that point forward, throughout the rest of time, whenever men rode forth to battle for good cause or for evil, they did so under the watchful eye of the man who had defeated a god. They were driven forward by Kratos, the mortal who had become the new god of war.
I'm gonna be real here, I am so glad they turned God of War into a franchise. Every game in it is just peak after peak after peak, but if it all ended here, I wouldn't be disappointed either. That was a damn solid ending. So that was God of War 1, a classic action-adventure game with plenty of violence, nudity, gore, and the early 2000s own brand of maturity stamped all over it. And yet, it's one of the best video games out there. They struck gold with the combat system, creating a perfectly fun gameplay style that puts you in the action movie hero feel, which was only improved on in the future. The story was simplistic on the surface, but it had the right amount of intrigue and depth to it. This game was a Greek tragedy about a man who, in his attempt to atone for his past mistakes, could never outrun them, becoming the very thing he swore to destroy. The game also gets massive points for world building. Every location, minus the underworld, was treated with so much care and attention to detail, really bringing every aspect of mythical ancient Greece to life. The game's also charming as hell. I already went through all the bonus content earlier, so it's very clear that the team behind this game clearly cared about what they were delivering. If you can get used to the jankier parts of it, I bet you enjoyed it as much as I do. I think everyone should try this game out for themselves, even if it's 20 years old, it's still an absolute masterpiece. Well, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notif bell, and follow me on Blue Sky and Ko-Fi to keep up with my other stuff. You can also become a patron to get cool perks like, holy shit, this music is really loud. That's right, I'm not stopping at the first game, I'll also be taking a look at the sequel, God of War 2, in the same video. I'm probably gonna regret this, aren't I? Now, God of War 1 was a massive success, so much so that a sequel was announced only 1 year later. Filling the director's chair would be Cory Balrog, who would go on to direct the rest of the series, and he's overall just a more likable guy than Jaffe. God of War 2 is also a very special game because it was basically the swan song of the PS2. It came out during the start of the PS3's life, but the PS3's launch was historically abysmal, and the PS2 had a bigger player base at the time, so here we are. With this game, the team really wanted to improve upon every aspect of the first game, and, well, did they succeed? Yeah! And no, but I'll get to that later. The story starts with what the last game left off on, Kratos sitting on his throne as the new god of war. Kratos holds a heavy grudge against the other gods for not ridding him of his nightmares, but he does find a new life meaning in the form of commanding his army to conquer cities in the name of Sparta. Kratos gears up to pillage the city of Rhodes, but not before Athena begs him to reconsider. The more destruction Kratos causes, the less Athena can protect him, but this plea falls on deaf ears as Kratos is deployed to the city to take it apart. But then a bird shows up to take his powers away and he's shrunken down to normal size.
Athena! You conspire against me!
His powers are then given to the Colossus of Rhodes and it proceeds to become sentient. Honestly, it would have been pretty cool to play as Big Kratos to fight the Colossus in the same vein as the Ares fight from the last game, but whatever. The actual opening is great as is. But before we get to that, we get to fight some guys, so let's talk about the combat. It's pretty much the same as it was in God of War 1, except they tweaked it to be more fluid and satisfying. Something I didn't bring up when talking about the combat in the first game was that sometimes the circle button prompt was a little finicky. It just kind of worked when it felt like it. But I didn't find myself running into that issue in this game, which is good. Kratos also retains all his moves from the last game, which all feel great and all, but they absolutely ruined the Cyclone of Chaos. Look at this shit! They made it actually look natural. Where's my cartoony Crash Bandicoot spin move, John Santa Monica? Oh. I stand corrected. Of course, there's also the improved parry in the form of the Golden Fleece upgrade obtained later, which allows you to deflect enemy projectiles. And while I thought the parry was pretty good in the first game, this one really has it beat. It just feels a lot more powerful and neat to pull off, even if the timing can get a little strict sometimes. It's satisfying to use on Gorgons, for example, and I especially like that you have to do a little quick time event to pull it off correctly. On that note, enemy variety is essentially the same, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there are some newcomers thrown into the mix, like these giant rock monsters that remind me of the Ancients from God of War 2018, and sorcerers who can summon more enemies and slow you down with this fart cloud effect, and these skeletons which were present in the character graveyard of the first game, so it's cool to see they brought them back here. Magic abilities are also back with a mix of quote-unquote new ones that are really just old ones under new names, and ones that are actually new. Typhon's Bane replaces Zeus's Fury, Kronos' Rage replaces Poseidon's Rage, Medusa's Gaze is replaced with the head of Uriel, and there's a new one dubbed the Atlas Quake, making you pound the ground to launch a bunch of boulders everywhere, and it's pretty useful to stun some enemies. I guess they didn't want something as overpowered as Army of Hades this time around, huh? The returning orb system also has a couple tweaks, mainly just displaying the exact amount of red orbs you collected on the HUD. The upgrade screen process is a lot faster now, and they added orange orbs that fill your rage meter, which thankfully can be turned off mid-rage now. And it should be noted that the two things that felt the worst to control in the first game, that is climbing and pushing objects, have received significant upgrades. They both feel quicker and more fluent, and they added this move that allows Kratos to slide down the wall with R1 as well as quickly moving along ropes and such. There's also little sections where you get to use the Blades of Chaos as a grapple hook to swing around, which feels really cool, so overall the platforming is the best it's been so far here. But back to the opening, this is definitely better than the first games, which is saying a lot because I already love that one. Here we're traveling through the city of Rhodes as a battle rages on between the armies of Rhodes and Sparta. It should also be noted that the last game had Kratos try to prevent the God of War from destroying a city, and now Kratos is the God of War destroying a city. It's a neat way to show how much worse he's become due to his grief, and as we see later, this is by far the most evil Kratos has been. People who ignore the finer details may think Kratos was at his worst in the next game, and while he certainly is evil there, he at least had Pandora to bring out a softer side of him every now and then, but there's pretty much nothing sympathetic about him here. But anyway, we go across rooftops and warehouses and even underwater for a brief moment, and while a giant golden statue tries to squish you like a bug. But the game's called God of War, not Bug of War, so every now and then we can engage in a boss fight against it that's broken up between sections of combat and platforming, which makes the whole experience feel like a grandiose spectacle you can't help but love. For me, I think the cherry on top is that damage inflicted on the Colossus carries over between encounters, which really makes it feel like you're dismantling it piece by piece. This is easily one of the most iconic video game openings of all time. Oh, and now we get to introduce ourselves to the locals. Yeah, like I said about an hour ago, all the sex minigames after the first game are just included as a joke because there's no way these two fine ladies are out for a midnight soak in the middle of a battle. But regardless, we get to engage in some good old-fashioned fucking. A bit of hanky-panky, if you will. Some shagging, as they say. Some, tossing a hot dog down the hallway. In the midst of the battle, Zeus intervenes by sending down the Blade of Olympus, the same blade that Zeus used to defeat the Titans way back then. Zeus commands Kratos to drain his godly power into the blade, which will help him defeat the Colossus, which is definitely not a trick. It's a bit annoying to lose all the orbs collected previously, but whatever, it's fine, I get it. You know, this statue looks a lot bigger from the inside. So now we get to fight more enemies while trying to make our way to the top to destroy the Colossus from the inside, and we get to use the Blade of Olympus here. You guys already know I don't like weapons that are slower than the Blades of Chaos, but the Blade of Olympus is one of the two exceptions, the other one being the Nemean Cestus from God of War 3. The Blade of Olympus has a fair amount of fluidity and speed despite being bigger and heavier, and all in all, I'll take this over Blade of Artemis any day. Anyway, this section is mostly platforming with the occasional stab the blade in the magical beam moment, and the last one has this cute puzzle where we have to swing this pendulum in order to not hit the laser eyes, and after delivering the finishing blow, the Colossus of Rhodes is done for.
Do you see, gods of Olympus? Do you need more proof than this?
Defeated and humiliated in front of his fellow Spartans, Kratos limps his way towards the Blade of Olympus to regain his godly powers, until suddenly it's revealed Zeus planned it all out the whole time. As you can see, Zeus has been redesigned to fit his new role in the story as the main antagonist, making him look appropriately tyrannical and ruthless. He also has a new voice actor, Corey Burton. If you consumed any piece of media, like, ever, there's a very high chance you've heard him before.
It is you who would betray me. Am I to stand idly by while Olympus is threatened? Your hands are already stained by the blood of a god. I will not let Ares' fate be my own.
The gods are petty and pathetic, and your rule is weak.
I grow tired of this insolence. I am the king of Olympus. And it is my way that is the way of the gods. You must vow to forever serve me. I serve no one. Then you'll leave me no choice.
So here we are at the next boss fight, Zeus. Oh, never mind. So now Kratos is bleeding out on the floor after refusing to serve Zeus. Zeus ominously says,
"You will never be the ruler of Olympus. The cycle ends here."
Which foreshadows one of the game's big bombshell reveals later, but for now, with a swift stroke of his blade, every soldier on the battlefield is vaporized.
You will pay for this, Zeus. Be certain of that.
We then get a freaky vision as Kratos' life flashes before his eyes until the narrator starts to interject. Soon we see that the narrator was none other than the Titan Gaia, Mother Earth herself. Gaia and the other Titans were imprisoned in Tartarus after a war with the gods, so it seems Kratos and the Titans share a common enemy. After joining forces with the Titans and rejecting death, Kratos crawls out of hell and starts his revenge quest to kill Zeus. We briefly talk to this Spartan soldier who definitely won't be important later, and Kratos hops onto a Pegasus to fly in the air. This flying section is a little weird. All you're doing is just flying around, killing a bunch of griffins, and pressing X to boost forward. Kratos wanted to fly to Olympus immediately, but Gaia lets him know he's not powerful enough to face Zeus right now, so the main plot revolves around him finding the Sisters of Fate and traveling back in time to prevent Zeus from betraying him. On our way there, we enter Typhon's cave, and in this shot that looks like a 4D theme park ride, we take a grand look at the Titan himself. Yo, Typhon! We're allies now! I can't wait to take down Zeus with you guys! High five! That's not what I meant. This section has us traverse this icy cave, which is pretty boring looking visually, so even if we're past the intro now, I'll wait until the next area to discuss the presentation. Besides getting Typhon's Bane by giving our uninformed Titan friend some eye surgery, we do meet another Titan in the form of Prometheus. His inclusion here is mainly to show more of Zeus's shittiness. Just like the Greek myths, the reason Prometheus was turned mortal and chained to this rock to have his guts rearranged by this eagle every day was only because he gave humanity the gift of fire. The story has a similar structure to the first game, where the middle kinda takes a back seat from the main quest to focus on flashbacks in between gameplay, but this time it's about Zeus's backstory and later on how it connects to Kratos. This is honestly something I think is worse than the first game. Don't get me wrong, the story in this game is pretty good, but the first game did something a little more original, whereas here they're just retelling part of Greek mythology, and everyone pretty much already knows this stuff. So yeah, it could have used a little more work in the story department, but in all fairness, it's the only complaint I have. At least for now. Anyway, we put Prometheus out of his misery, get the rage ability, free the Pegasus, and enter the Temple of LAHKESIS, one of the three sisters of fate. LAHKESIS is the leader of the three, and her personality is reflected in her temple, with it being very regal and clean, save for the dead bodies hanging from the ceiling, which we can use as dead weight for a puzzle. As you can see, the presentation is a noticeable step up from the first game, which says something because I already expressed my love for that game's visuals. God of War 2 adds more detail to the environments and character models, making it all look more polished overall. The biggest visual upgrade is present in the CGI cutscenes. If you compare them side by side with God of War 1's, it's super noticeable. The camera also has the same strengths as the first game, never being a hindrance and cinematically pulling back on occasion to flex more gorgeous visuals. Like right here as we trek across these massive chains to the Steeds of Time. These steeds were a gift by Kronos to the Sisters of Fate in a failed attempt to tip the scale in his favor, but we all know how that turned out. Oh well, worth a try. Across these massive golden statues, we need to unlock certain doors with the help of a special key, but in order to do that, we need to partake in the first proper boss fight.
The ghost of Sparta. Then what they say is true.
Theseus.
So here we have Theseus, son of Poseidon, slayer of the Minotaur, founder of Athens, and now he's a crazy old man who serves the Sisters of Fate. Of course, the first game only had 3 bosses, but the sequel is what made the series famous for having amazing boss fights, with each of them being one of Greek mythology's all-stars. Unfortunately, most bosses don't really have a place in the story. It's very much just meeting them and killing them, but again, the gameplay is really what matters. So Theseus's fight starts off pretty close quarters. You gotta keep hacking and slashing your blades at him while dodging his little ice spear, and the second phase has him perched up on the roof while he just sends monsters at us. Come on, Theseus, get back down here. I promise I won't jump you. Honestly, this phase is slightly worse than the first, but I like how you gotta divide your attention between killing enemies, dodging projectiles, and shooting Theseus in the face. And I actually really like the music here. It's reused for a couple combat gauntlets later on in this game and in the others, but I think it fits pretty well with Theseus's arrogant personality. So anyway, after we squeeze Theseus into a fine wine, we get the key and gain access to the rest of the steeds. Of course, there's more fun platforming and some enemies to kill in this really neat timed puzzle that has you scramble to free each steed from their restraints. And once that's done, we whip them a couple times and they gallop across the sea, pulling the entire island of creation closer to the Temple of LAHKESIS. Man, I don't even know what to say here. If there's one thing this series knows how to do, it's having a massive scale. Going back into the temple, we have this puzzle that seems impossible to do, but a secret underwater passage leads us to the Amulet of the Fates, one of the best new additions in my opinion. Pressing the shoulder buttons simultaneously around these statues will allow you to slow down time for a brief moment, allowing for some really cool puzzles to be made. It's a shame this concept wasn't brought back, like, ever, because this is such a unique tool and it goes with the main motivation of traveling through time. Over here we use the amulet to scale the LAHKESIS statue, who has some pretty harsh words for our hero.
Hear me, fallen god. None defy what the fates decree. That is how it must be. Only death awaits you at the end of your journey.
My death is what began this journey.
The fates have not deemed victory for you. Your soul will never find peace for what you have become.
I am what the gods have made me.
Reasonable crash out. We fight more monsters, do a puzzle that's similar to the Colossus opening where you gotta block the statue's laser eyes, and now we're here. The Island of Creation, the main location of this game and the origin of all life on this realm. Humans, monsters, gods, titans, even the Sisters of Fate all originated from this very island. In contrast to Pandora's Temple, which was a man-made, mostly dead and mysterious temple, the Island of Creation is brimming with life at every corner. We explore bogs, jungles, ruins covered in moss. It's all very pretty looking. The first area in the Island of Creation is the Temple of Uriel, and, well, it's boss fight time again. So here we have the Barbarian King. If he looks a little familiar, that's because he was the man who had Kratos begging to Ares the last time the two of them crossed paths. Now he's an undead ghoul riding on horseback with the power to summon souls of the underworld, and he's presumably on his own mission to change his fate. His inclusion here is pretty interesting, even if, again, almost all the bosses are just here for the sake of being here and they don't really impact the story all too much. And the boat captain from the first game is here again, which is a really unexpected but hilarious callback.
No! Not you again!
Gameplay-wise, I don't really have much to say for the Barbarian King. And after we beat him, we get to wield his hammer, which, you know I don't like these kind of weapons. So now we're here in the Temple of Uriel, for real this time. Puzzle-wise, there's some that make use of the Amulet of the Fates, as well as pushing these blocks to tip over this massive, unstable structure to advance forward. And who could forget this cool puzzle where you need to place this corpse on this river to have it loop to the other side of the room to keep a button held down. And speaking of carrying objects, and dead people, later on we find a wounded soldier on the ground.
God of War. Jason. That beast took him. All our men are dead. Jason has the fleece. You must save him.
Only for Kratos to chuck him into these gears. I know a lot of people talk about Poseidon's princess from the third game to be the most fucked up thing Kratos has done, but this is honestly on the same level, Jesus Christ. Anyway, this puzzle leads directly into a mini-boss against the Cerberus, which I remember being pretty tough during my first couple of playthroughs, but overall it's not too bad. I guess I was just stubborn back then and I refused to dodge when needed. It's a miracle I was even able to beat this trilogy back then. But yeah, this boss fight grants us the Golden Fleece, which is honestly really cool looking on Kratos. It's an upgrade to his design that's so good that it's hard to imagine Greek Kratos without it. He looks quite dapper here. Anyway, we can test the fleece on the nearby Gordons, like I said earlier. There's quite a handful of them here, and I like that some enemies we encounter on this path have already been turned to stone because of them. That's really cool. But not as cool as the next boss fight against Uriel herself, Medusa's sister. It makes good use of the Golden Fleece with some pretty flashy QuickTime events, and it's pretty cinematic overall, just like the others. Unfortunately, I can't really show you the boss fight because, well, we should move on. What the fuck happened there? So here's a cool puzzle. Use these cranks to make these pillars rise, swim underwater to travel to the next pillar, repeat like 3 times, use the amulet to slow down time, and swing across. And after this cool arena where we fight a couple dogs while occasionally doing a quick time event to prevent becoming a Kratos sandwich, we enter this cliffside with a lovely view of the Steeds of Time, and I think I came across a weird music glitch. I mean, unless it's supposed to sound like that. Whatever, time to swing across this gap. So here we're back in the previous area with the statue of LAHKESIS, and we can use the fleece to move on to the next area themed around her sister, Atropos. We need to do the same thing as last time, that being repelling her laser sight to advance forward, and in order to do that, the next room has this cool puzzle that has you extend these roots and stop time to quickly walk across, which is pretty cool. And up next, it's time for the next boss fight.
No! That door was my only escape.
Okay, I'ma stop you right there, Perseus. This door wasn't your only escape, because if we take a look back there, yeah, that looks like a bunch of open fucking space for you to leave from. Is he stupid? Anyway, yeah, the next boss fight is Perseus, the Slayer of Medusa. Well, not in this universe. I honestly don't have much to say for this boss. He's unique because he can turn himself invisible, and you gotta pay attention to the water ripples to land your attacks. Again, is he stupid? And the second half ditches the invisibility gimmick and you can just obliterate this twink normally. In order to repel Atropos' lasers, we need to use Perseus' shield for one of them and the golden fleece for the other. It took me a minute to figure out I was supposed to use the fleece, but that's honestly pretty smart. After leaving the courtyard of Atropos, there's this room housing 3 chests that are locked behind this tricky door. It took me a minute to figure out the solution, and thank God I did, because I didn't want to have to Google Atropos chest. That would lead to some undesirable results. Anyway, the puzzle preceding this one involves the amulet, so we get the statue and position and gun toward the chests. One of them has the Urn of Olympus, which is usable in bonus play, essentially a New Game Plus mode. And would you look at the time? Sorry folks, we interrupt this God of War 2 retrospective to bring you the bonus content! Since I mentioned the Urn and New Game Plus, there's more urns present throughout the game, each doing something different for New Game Plus, i.e. infinite magic, more red orbs, etc. But besides that, it's got basically the same stuff as the first game, except noticeably less stuff is here, which is kind of a shame. There's no character graveyard or any non-canon bonus videos or a cheat code that unlocks everything as far as I know, but there's still stuff like behind the scenes videos and unlockable costumes. The costumes in question aren't over the top silly like the first game, but they do look pretty cool. There's Athena, Hydra armor, Dark Odyssey, Hercules before they redesigned him I guess, Kratos before he Michael Jacksoned himself, God armor, and besides those, the only other thing of note is the Challenge of the Titans replacing the first game's Challenge of the Gods. And this one unlocks the Arena of the Fates, which as far as I know is basically Super Smash Bros.'s training mode, where you can pick and choose your stats or what enemies to fight. I don't want to bother with Challenge of the Titans, so unfortunately I'll never try out the Arena, but what can you do? Anyway, that's about it for the bonus stuff, so back in the game, we do a quick puzzle with the amulet and we obtain a new weapon on the side, the Spear of Destiny. I'm still a Blades of Chaos truther, but this spear controls pretty well, all things considered. What it lacks in snappiness, it makes up for in bounciness. I found myself switching to the spear occasionally just for the heck of it. I approve of this. But with the spear shoved up my ass, now it's time for the coolest bit of swinging in the game. Just ignore all the times I fucked up and died. Now time for something much less cool. In fact, this scene is very weird. This is Icarus, you know, the small Victorian child from the original myth where he flew too close to the sun. Here he's a smelly old man who's probably carrying 12 different diseases, and our interaction with him is just, well, I don't know how else to describe it, so I'll just show you.
Go back, warrior. There is no passage here. You will never make it across. You think you can, but you cannot. Do you hear me? It's my wings that will make it across. It is my test! Do you not know who I am? Have you not heard of Icarus? It is my fate to make it across, none other! This is my test!
The sisters will grant me an audience, not you. You will die, White Warrior. You will die.
I will reach the Sisters of Fate, and I will use your wings to do so.
The sisters will not allow you, a fallen god, to bathe in their light!
One quick time event later, Icarus falls into a magical butthole, and now we're in one of the most visually impressive areas in the game, the Domain of Atlas. And just when I thought the platforming couldn't get any better, the Wings of Icarus is now in our arsenal. These babies make you fall slowly to the ground when you hold the jump button mid-air, which helps you reach platforms you otherwise couldn't access. In addition to that, they also make you float upwards if there's a current of hot air below, so overall it's a nice new item that enhances the platforming. But besides that, holy fuck, the Domain of Atlas. The environment and level designers must have had bills to pay because they cooked with this area. Traveling across the imprisoned Titan, we climb up rock walls, glide over dangling massive chains, leap over lakes of lava, and we enter this area that mixes in these fleshy and bony elements, which is pretty disgusting, I won't lie. I mean, look here, we're literally pulling Atlas's bones apart. Really, this level is fucking impressive in every aspect. Back during the development of God of War 1, the team was planning on making a level that had Kratos climb onto Kronos' back on his way to the Temple of Pandora, but it was cut due to pacing and technical issues. But here they pulled off the Titan-based level perfectly before God of War 3 with its Kronos boss fight. And this is unrelated, but I kept dying in this part, probably because I just wasn't focused or something. Okay, now that I've beaten the rock monster, we can use this grovelly corpse to advance forward. Or not. Why does this keep happening to me? And I haven't even mentioned the best part yet, the music. This area is the first one to use my favorite track in the entire game, Fires in the Urn Chamber. And after we climb up the side of his arm, at long last, we encounter Atlas, one of the Titans who's now imprisoned in Tartarus, sentenced to hold up the entire Earth for all eternity. Atlas is voiced by the late, great Michael Clarke Duncan, and he's by far the best performance in this game, which says a lot since he's only in this one scene. He just has this deep, powerful, commanding voice, perfectly fit for a Titan.
Who breaks my chains of torment? Strong, but you are far too small, even for an Olympian, to be a god. Kratos. You dare show your face to me after what you have done?
As Atlas implies, he and Kratos have crossed paths before, which we eventually do see in the PSP prequel, God of War Chains of Olympus. I always thought his interaction with Kratos was pretty funny, since Atlas wants to squish him like a bug for siding with Zeus before Kratos just goes, nuh-uh.
Atlas! You must trust me! Much has passed since we last met!
Why would I ever trust a servant of Zeus?
Because I seek to destroy Zeus!
Afterward, Atlas goes over the events of the Great War again, showing Zeus winning it with a swift stroke of the Blade of Olympus, just like we saw at the beginning of the game.
I no longer do the bidding of the gods, Atlas! I have stomached their betrayal for the last time!
I like to think that Kratos is talking literally here. Anyway, yeah, Atlas is on our side now, so he grants us the Atlas Quake and he sends us all the way up to the surface to the Palace of the Fates. This regal palace, smack dab in the middle of the moody skybox and vast chasm, looks absolutely phenomenal, and the statues are definitely a nice touch. From here, we do some more platforming and go through an enemy gauntlet that was pretty tough, and by the end of it, my health bar was like one hair thick. Yeah, thanks a lot, game. Magic is definitely what I needed right now. There's also this room with a rotating wall and spikes that pop out of the floor, which you gotta stop by pushing a large block in the way. But not before opening all the chests, of course. Oh, also there's these annoying harpies that shoot spider webs at you, but they're whatever. But now we're in the main room and oh my god, the lens flare! Jokes aside, the sky here looks pretty nice. In the distance over there, we can see a big pillar that looks distinctly feather-like. Oh golly gee, I wonder what could be up with that. This palace is structured similarly to the Temple of Pandora from the first game, except without the whole aligning rings of Pandora thing. It's got a linear progression, but each puzzle loops back to the main room, which is pretty cool. Back in the other room, we pickpocket a crank handle from this guy, and once we turn off the flames down here and slow down time again, we find out the main objective to each path. See, over here, there's a book that needs to be read out loud to progress forward. Unfortunately, Kratos can't read. Thankfully, this guy's just begging on his hands and knees to let him help us. But oh no, more enemies approach. We need the translator in one piece to read the holy scripture. If anyone's killing this translator, it's me! One blood sacrifice later, the pillar in the horizon opens up to reveal that it's actually a massive phoenix statue, and we get a message from LAHKESIS. We're making good progress so far. And side note, Jesus Christ, why are all the female characters half naked in the Greek era? I'm so damn tired of censoring all this stuff. Here I am thinking I'm safe until LAHKESIS shows up with the big nipple of demonetization. She already has one of them covered up too, like come on man. Anyway, we get the RAM key and we unlock one of the doors in the main room, leading us to this room with spiked walls closing in until we clear this enemy cluster. And up next is the Garden of the Gods, a small room full of greenery and golden statues of the Olympians. There's Hades, Helios, Poseidon, Zeus, Athena, who won't stop cooking a bowl of yapperoni over here. And Ares is here too, which means this lineup is a little outdated. Shouldn't Kratos be here instead? A little later, we go into this underwater passage littered with spikes and corpses, and it's got this heavy red tint going on, which is nice. Though it's weird that it lasts like 5 seconds before the next room, which is a stark contrast color-wise. This room is covered with ice, and it's our job to melt it all. I'm gonna be honest, this puzzle stumped me for a while. I just kept running around doing random stuff, not really knowing what to do. But once I figured it out, a big cartoon light bulb went off over my head. It felt really satisfying. Break all the icicles above, use this mirror to deflect it onto the symbols below, crank your shit, and now you're free to melt all the ice. After a section that has you destroy these hives to ascend to the next floor unbothered, we make it to the second translator doing his best impression of God of War 1 Kratos. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. L1 plus R1.
Read the words.
LAHKESIS FaceTimes us again and we get another key. The Phoenix statue opens up more, and at long last, we're finally here. The worst section in the entire game. I already gave the Underworld and Desert of Lost Souls a fair share of shit earlier, but believe me when I say that this one elevator ride is worse than both of them combined. Hell, what are some other bad levels in great games? Ironwood, Metropolis Zone, the Resident Evil 2 sewers, The Last of Us sewers, the Ocarina of Time water temple. This one elevator mogs all of them. They all look like masterpieces in comparison. Allow me to explain. This elevator can only be opened with a quick time event where you need to mash the circle button. It's a pretty lengthy ride, so you'll spend a lot of time mashing and mashing and mashing. If you don't, the spike ceiling will fall on you, crush you, and kill you. This is already bad enough, but watch what happens when you throw in these skeletons that constantly interrupt your progress. Oh god, this is the closest I've ever been. Please let this be the one. Oh, come on, man! I did it! I unlocked easy mode because I died too many times. Yippee! I tried everything to get rid of these former Kratos victims quicker. Atlas Quake, Gorgon Flash, even the fucking hammer that I hate. But in the end, I managed to beat this section from sheer dumb luck. Normally, I play games for an hour each day, but this one section made my right arm hurt like hell, so I only played for 30 minutes. I know this was released in 2007, but we really gotta scuff Cory Balrog's shoes 18 years later because of this. Anyway, fuck this game, I'm gonna go take a break.
Whoa, is that a new outfit, Kratos?
Let's get back to work. So now we're in the Urn Chamber, which was the namesake for my favorite song in the game. Honestly, I don't know why it plays in the Atlas level, but we get to listen to it again here, so I'm content. Anyway, this harsh chamber of lava and brimstone has us retrieve phoenix ashes to place in the flames in order for the phoenix to be reborn. And in order to do that, we enter this room with retractable spikes on the floor, and pulling a lever grants us a Chaos Emerald. Breaking this wall reveals another statue, so we fondle this crank and use Chaos Control to zip out of here. Next, we push this statue to the end of the room while fighting enemies. This section wasn't as bad as the elevator ride Dick Smasher, but it's still a little annoying. It took me longer than I'd like to admit. But once it's done, we grapple up to the Phoenix ashes, push it to the main room, place it in the lava, and give birth to the Phoenix. This Phoenix is gonna be our ride to the top of the palace, where we'll finally meet the Sisters of Fate, but before we can mount it, we need to use the Chaos Emerald collected previously and use it to blow on the Phoenix like a birthday candle. And after a couple of puzzles, we start the next boss fight.
I have come too far to fail!
Mr. Game & Watch. Just kidding, it's that one Spartan warrior from the beginning of the game. See? I told you he wouldn't be important later. Jokes aside, this scene is pretty heartbreaking. This dude was one of the last soldiers who remained faithful to Kratos, returning to Sparta when commanded to do so. But in a petty act of revenge, Zeus arrived in the Cloak of Darkness to destroy the entire city as a giant. I guess the gods just really like doing this, huh? With no other option, this random soldier decided to go to the Island of Creation to seek an audience with the Sisters of Fate, meaning he had to go through almost everything Kratos did, which is impressive as fuck. You can actually see him fighting monsters in the background of some levels, which is really cool. But alas, he finally met his end when he was faced with his Spartan general in a dimly lit room.
Now you are all that is left. I have faith that our brothers of Sparta will live on through the true God of War.
Zeus! Is this how you face me, coward? I am through doing the bidding of the gods. Come down here and face me now, Zeus!
Our next boss fight is against the Kraken, a vicious monster of the sea. The Kraken isn't actually from Greek mythology, but rather Norse mythology, so it honestly fits more in Kratos' PS4 adventures. I guess the devs just wanted to pay homage to Clash of the Titans, which is fair. Anyway, this boss is unique in the sense that Kratos doesn't want to partake in it at first. He'll just pout like a toddler and say,
I grow tired of the lies of the gods!
When you press any button. Once the Kraken gets a hold of him, Kratos gets a vision of Gaia manipulating him by taking the form of his deceased wife, which actually works. As an unfortunate victim of manipulation, I gotta say, Kratos is stupid as fuck for falling for this. Also, I just noticed, did they have the characters over a green screen or something? Because if you look at her hair, you'll see they didn't key it in correctly. Anyway, not Gaia gives Kratos a power-up, meaning she just refilled his rage meter, so now we can partake in the Kraken boss fight, for real this time. As you can see, the tentacles have these awful rashes on them, so let's just help him out real quick by giving them a good scratch. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. With that out of the way, we use the last Spartan's corpse to have a button held down. Huh. You know, it's one thing to use corpses of nobodies that are just found around random rooms, but you clearly cared for this dude. This seems a little disrespectful. Now, the Kraken does eventually eat the last Spartan, but before that, we can climb onto his tentacles and sever them off, which is pretty cool. And the boss fight ends by pushing it off the edge and activating the bridge, impaling it. At long last, we're at the final area of the game, the Temple of the Fates. The temple is pretty much nothing more than a boss arena for the three sisters, save for the introductory puzzle that has you ring the Zeus and Kronos bells to break the LAHKESIS statue. So skipping that, we enter the throne of LAHKESIS, and here she is, Little Miss Big Nipple of Demonetization herself.
been expecting you.
Out of my way.
Your resolve is admirable, even if it is misguided. None can change their destiny, Kratos. We sisters determine the fate of all. It was I who deemed that the Titans lose the Great War, and I who have allowed you to come this far. It is not your destiny to kill Zeus.
According to her, the sisters control the fates of everyone, including Kratos, but spoilers, I think they might be full of shit since Kratos ends up defeating them. However, the boss is pretty challenging, so there's that. The first phase is against LAHKESIS alone, and it's another close quarters one that has you dodge her laser attacks and even grappling up above to avoid this attack that covers the whole floor. I kinda did find an exploit that somewhat cheeses the boss using the Cyclone of Chaos midair and quickly grappling back, but even with that, the first phase was pretty challenging. The second phase brings in her edgy sister Atropos, and it's definitely more interesting once we go into the Mario 64 painting and time travel back to the final boss of the previous game. We're fighting on top of the sword bridge outside the Temple of the Oracle while past Kratos dukes it out with Ares. I don't think I need to tell anyone that this is cool as hell. The goal here is to prevent Atropos from retconning anything while fighting these goons. When we're done, Kratos of the past grabs the sword to fight Ares. I guess he just didn't notice the scary witch with Wolverine claws taking a nap there. So now we teleport back to the throne room for the third and final phase. This one switches back to LAHKESIS, except now she has more powerful attacks and we get to play whack-a-mole with her sister. The music switches to The End Begins, the game's main theme, showing Kratos has the upper hand now, and it's overall just the cherry on top of this tough-as-nails boss fight. That's all I really have to say. I don't want to talk further about it because I'm tired of censoring LAHKESIS, so just play the finishing cutscene. Up yours, LAHKESIS. We'll see who demonetizes who. Before we meet the third sister, we make it to this room with 3 prophecies on the walls. One of them has already come and gone, the great war between the gods and titans. The second one is a little more interesting as it foreshadows the ending to God of War 3, where Kratos observes the post-apocalyptic wasteland he caused out in his need for revenge. And the third one... Oh boy. It shows 3 travelers heading to an unknown destination, being guided by nothing else than the stars in the sky. If you're familiar with the series, this doesn't sound like anything that happens in any future game. This is because this prophecy is foreshadowing David Jaffe's original ending idea for the series. In it, Kratos would have met with his Norse and Egyptian counterparts, and they would become the 3 wise men on their way to witness the birth of baby Jesus. Man, I don't know about you guys, but that ending sounds like the stupidest thing ever. I'm glad we got the ending we did in 3, and I'm glad Jaffe was never allowed to cook again after this game. But getting back on track, the next room is the Loom Chamber, where the third sister, Clotho, sits and spins the threads of fate to all life, like some sort of gross spider-like humanoid.
It is through my threads that all life is born. You must not tamper with destiny, Kratos. You will destroy everything.
Man, playing this in HD really shows some of the imperfections, huh? I don't think I was meant to know that Clotho was secretly a marionette. I'm gonna be honest, this chamber has a pretty cool atmosphere. Water drips from the ceiling. I'm a huge fan of the aqua blue color palette, and okay, never mind, it's gauntlet time, I guess. This enemy gauntlet is the last one in the entire game, and they did not hold back here, that's for sure. I am in immense pain. As you descend down the path, they'll just keep throwing enemy after enemy at you, and I hope the Fates boss fight didn't take too much out of you, because you'll need to lock the fuck in for this. I will say though, it's a neat gimmick to have the barrier walls constantly switch up on you, which sometimes leads to you and that one undead legionnaire taking some time apart. Sorry man, it's not you, it's me. Aw, I can't stay mad at you, come here! By the end of the gauntlet, I was all palm sweaty mom spaghetti, but I was just glad it was over. And now we get to meet Clotho herself, and she is covered in boobs. Man, if they put this much boobs in the game, why can't they at least be fair? Anyway, I'm gonna dance around as much as I can with this part, but just as the previous area was the final combat section, this is the final puzzle section. We need to make it around Clotho's conniving claws to ascend up this structure, and part of it involves impaling your hands with these dangling butcher knives on the ceiling. If you think about it, it makes absolutely no sense for these to be here. It's almost like they were asking for Kratos to do this, but whatever. The puzzles here are decent head scratchers, all culminating with a boss fight against Clotho herself. I mean, I'm using that term pretty loosely because this is also more of a puzzle than anything. Clotho doesn't have any attacks other than flailing her arms around like wet noodles and, of course, whatever this is. The boss itself doesn't take too long. Once you slow down time and render her arms useless, you just need to figure out how you're gonna erase this Sister of Fate slicer to give our anti-ad revenue adversary a loom chamber lobotomy. At this point, Kratos has finally reached his destination, so now we can control the threads of fate. By mashing circle, we can go back in time to the beginning of the game to fight Zeus when he's weakened, so once we make a mad dash to the top floor, we're back in the City of Rhodes, where, my number one complaint comes fully into play. To be fair, it's expected. I mean, you can't write time travel into a story without having some sort of plot hole, but some are bigger to ignore than others, case in point. Because if Kratos went back in time to before he died, this means Sparta was never destroyed. The last Spartan is probably still alive. He's probably in this exact room. I bet that's him! And if Kratos is still there, stomaching Zeus's betrayal, just chilling, what happened to this Kratos? Does he just go on the same exact journey? Does the timeline split? I mean, if he goes in the same exact journey as our Kratos, that wouldn't make any sense because Zeus isn't there to destroy I'm thinking too much into this. Honestly, you can easily rewrite the story to completely omit time travel, and I think the narrative would have definitely benefited from it. Technical Bacon Productions made a video on this very topic, and I think the way he went about it was pretty interesting. I don't know, not a lot happens in this story, huh? Well, besides some major plot points for the next game. With that said, it's time for the final boss against Zeus.
I underestimated you. A mistake I do not intend to repeat.
The fight takes place at the Summit of Sacrifice, and at first glance I thought it was just some random mountain, but it's actually got some significance, which I'll get to a little bit later. For now, Zeus's first phase has him go big mode again, and we need to quick time event some sirens in order to give Zeus tinnitus. He'll try to attack with his own lightning-based attacks, but for the most part he politely waited his turn and spectated the sirens. Also, the sirens have their boobs out, because of course they do. Anyway, the first phase ends as we give Zeus some of his own medicine, draining some of his godly power into the Blade of Olympus. It's at this point where the fight goes back to the close quarters style the other ones have, except Zeus is unique in the way that him and Kratos keep wrestling the Blades of Olympus out of each other's hands. And when we don't have the Blade of Olympus, we switch back to the Blades of Chaos, which is pretty neat. You're also gonna want to parry every projectile Zeus throws at you, that way you're guaranteed to never run out of health or magic, which is really funny. There's also moments where Kratos just starts whacking him with pillars, including this one where he decides to be a little show-off. And of course, the music. It's probably been used prior to this scene, but I just really like it as the final boss theme. Personally, it's no Brothers of Blood from God of War 3. But I still quite like it. The boss ends when Kratos decides to play a funny prank on Zeus, pretending to surrender, begging for death, when suddenly... Nah, I'm just kidding. Athena is here!
Athena! No!
Oh, not for long, apparently.
Why do you sacrifice yourself?
To save Olympus.
I do not seek to destroy Olympus, only Zeus.
Zeus is Olympus.
He brought this to himself.
Because of fear, Kratos. A fear felt by his father, Kronos. A fear that wrought the Great War. A fear that drove Zeus to kill you. His own son.
His son.
And just like that, the big bombshell reveal of this game is that Zeus is in fact Kratos' father. This is why he was so adamant on keeping him under his thumb back at the beginning. He feared that Kratos would one day overthrow him, and this is why the final boss takes place where it does. This is the same summit where Kronos ate his children back during his rule. Back then, Kronos towered over his children as he devoured them in an attempt to render the prophecy of his demise false. And now Zeus was in that exact same position. I really like that. And thus begins Kratos' quest to take down his father. Anyone who would get in the way of the ghost of Sparta's divine retribution would perish.
If all on Olympus would deny me my vengeance, then all on Olympus will die. I have lived in the shadow of the gods for long enough. The time of the gods has come to an end.
Remember, Kratos, you have the power to control time itself.
The entire chamber is crumbling down to its demise, so one quick loom tugging and mad dash later, we go back even further in time, back to the Great War between gods and titans. As Kratos takes his titan friends back to the present, the game ends on, quite literally, a cliffhanger.
Zeus, your son has returned! I bring the destruction of Olympus!
So that was God of War 2. Overall, I still think this was a phenomenal sequel that succeeded in what it set out to do. The improvements to the platforming and combat controls, puzzles, location variety, and overall presentation shouldn't be understated. Santa Monica Studio knocked it out of the park. Not to mention this game's solid roster of boss fights, with them being fun to conquer and really flashy with their quick time event finishers. And the story, while pretty flawed, had some of the best moments in the series that are still talked about to this day. However, on the topic of story, this game really does have its flaws, with the biggest one being the story. Most of the game just consists of filler, and the time travel at the end complicates things a bit. It's really a shame because I think the first game had a really solid story, so seeing the sequel being kind of a downgrade, but not by much, does sour it a bit. But at the end of the day, the gameplay is what truly matters, so God of War 2 is still awesome regardless. This is still one of the best PlayStation games ever made, and it'll always remain a perfect successor to a classic in my eyes. This is probably a hot take, but I think I kind of prefer the first game over the sequel. Sure, God of War 2 is objectively the better game, but I think the first game felt a little more special to me, flaws and all. And hey, the worst part in God of War 2 is much worse than the worst parts in the first game, so there's that. Alright, well, I think I'm finally done making God of War videos until the Amazon show eventually comes out. I think it's time I took a break. This video was really long. Thankfully, I know a good meadow I can relax in. I think I'll go there now, actually. Does anyone smell a DMCA? What do you mean the Japanese version censors the nudity?